With Felix Bautista out, the Orioles should be signing a closer at least for 2026. So let's talk about who the free agent closers are coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, November 17th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are finally getting to our first free agent wish list episode of the offseason. And we will start with the closers because the Orioles are going to be without Felix Bautista for most of and potentially all of the 2026 season after he underwent shoulder surgery a couple months ago. And the Orioles, they're going to need somebody at the back end of the bullpen because not only did they lose Bautista, but they traded away 4 relievers at the deadline. Now, they did get one back in Andrew Kittredge, but there is still no closer sitting in that Orioles bullpen right now. And Mike Elias, when talking to the media already this offseason, has put a closer on his wish list for free agency. It tells me the O's are going to be big-time players among the closers. And luckily for them, there are some really good closers hitting the market this offseason. So I'm going to give you my top 6 free agent closers the Orioles should go after. That's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So the way these wish list episodes will work, I'll do them throughout the next couple of months here in the offseason as free agency starts to kick into gear. We usually have to wait until that first week of December when the winter meetings happen for things to really start. So November, generally a good time to run through these wish lists. I will give you 6 players, ranking them from number 6 to number 1. Remember, this is not necessarily who I think the 6 best closers who are free agents this year. It's a mix of who I think is best, but who I also think the Orioles should go after and would fit in Baltimore, and whose projected contract, because we have that kind of stuff too, would fit the best for what the Orioles are trying to do. And I'll say it right now, Edwin Diaz might be the best closer in baseball. He is available this offseason. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the number 1 on my wish list, and that is generally how these things work. So let's jump into it. Number 6 on my list, 34-year-old right-hander Emilio Pagan, who is projected to get a 1-year, $10 million contract this offseason. A lot of these projections are going to come from the free agent matrix that is put together by John Becker over at FanGraphs, an awesome resource and spreadsheet that you can look at. He takes into account all the free agency predictions, whether it's the big ones by like Ben Clemens at FanGraphs or the big MLB trade rumors list or the big one done at The Athletic, and pulls them all together to get an average of all of those predictions. And that is what his spreadsheet spits out. And I like to just kind of go through all those averages and that be the number where I think this player could sign. So let's start with Emilio Pagan. Emilio Pagan had a 2.88 ERA this season with the Cincinnati Reds. It was the lowest ERA for him in the big leagues since 2019 in Tampa Bay. Now, Pagan debuted back in 2017 with the Mariners, and he's always been a guy with this good stuff, but always had a huge home run problem. He's been an extreme fly ball pitcher for his entire career. I think a 40% ground ball rate is by far the highest he's had in his career. Always super fly ball. And he's played in some pitcher and then some hitter-friendly ballparks, which have hurt him. But he's always had this good stuff, but never had these great ERAs. Like he did post a 2.31 in Tampa in 2019, and then turned around in his next full season, had a 4.83 ERA in San Diego in 2021, 2 years later. And a lot of it is just because of the home run. So he's kind of a yo-yo reliever where, I mean, you just look at his last 4 years, 2022 in Minnesota, 4.43 ERA, 2023 in Minnesota, 2.99. Then 2024, he comes to Cincinnati with a 4.50, and then comes back to Cincinnati at age 34 and posts a 2.88 as their closer. And really, this year in Cincinnati for Pagan was just the second year he's been a closer. You got to go back to 2019 for the Rays, when that Rays team did make the postseason, was the only other time that Emilio Pagan's really been seen as a closer, and he didn't really spend the entire season in Tampa as their closer. I mean, he did pick up 20 saves that year, but they had a couple of different options they would go to. He saved a career-high 32 games for a Reds team that went to the postseason, got itself to the wild card this year. His stats from this season: 70 appearances, 68 and 2/3 innings. He had a 2.88 ERA with a 3.72 FIP. He ran a 30% strikeout rate to an 8.1% walk rate. Those are really, really good numbers. But again, a 29% ground ball rate makes him an extreme fly ball pitcher. Now, again, he's had some bad seasons with San Diego and Minnesota with those big home run problems, but Cincinnati is one of the best hitters parks in baseball, and he pitched there this year and had one of his best seasons. So that's something where you say he can still have success even if he's in a hitter's park. And Camden Yards is certainly less of a hitter's park than it used to be, but I think it still plays that way, especially for lefties. Now, if you do look at his home and away splits, he had a 3.6 ERA at home and a 1.88 ERA on the road, but that's pretty typical for any Cincinnati Reds pitcher because their park is just so conducive to hitters. Now, what was nice is he really further developed what then became maybe his best pitch this year, and that was his splitter. Pagan had a 112 stuff plus overall this season. That was a career best, and was really aided by that splitter. Opponents hit just 121 with a 41% swing and miss rate against the splitter this year, and he really upped the usage. He threw it 20% of the time after throwing it just 15% last year. It jumped his cutter to be his number 2 pitch behind the 4-seam fastball. And it is only a 3-pitch mix. It's a 4-seamer at 96, it's a splitter, and it's a cutter. That's all he's going to throw. But he relies on the 4-seamer a lot. He throws the 4-seamer 61% of the time. It is a heavy fastball approach for Pagan, and that's because it's a weapon. The 95.8 miles per hour he averaged on that was the highest velocity of his career at age 34. It's got 18.5 inches of induced vertical break, which gives it that really kind of rising action that you like to see for a fastball. It plays up in the zone, which makes it good. But a lot of guys who have those riding fastballs, if the fastball comes down into the middle of the plate, it leads to a lot of homers. And that's why Pagan has had such a big home run problem throughout his career. But he changed the grip on his splitter. He got it to kind of go less side to side and go more straight down in terms of the movement. His hard hit rate overall dropped from 51% last year to 37% this year. And basically it was because he finally had command of a better splitter. That was one of the biggest drops in hard hit rate on the season. The big concern for him is just that he'll be 35 years old in May. And really 2025 was his only true beginning to end full year as a closer in the big leagues. Now he was really good, and who says he can't do it again, but he's had some bad years. He's been a roller coaster pitcher, right? You look at just his logs from his seasons, he's really never had 2 good seasons in a row. When he's had a year like this, and he's had some other years where he's had a sub-3 ERA, he's immediately followed up every time with a 4.5 ERA and a 4.5 ERA, literally on the dot both times after a sub-3 ERA. Not saying that kind of pattern means it's going to happen again in 2026, but with the way his career has gone, it's very possible. If, things start to go south, it's going to be a lot of home runs that he gives up, which hurts you even more in a 9th inning scenario, especially when you're trying to hold a 1-run lead. Pagan, for me, is the guy that if the Orioles really do whiff on the other big names, he's a solid guy you can put in the 9th, and if it doesn't work out, he can still be a good setup man for you if you have to put someone else in that role. He's good enough to get on the list, but I don't know if I'd be super happy if the Orioles landed on Pagan. But if they get anyone in the top 5, I'd be okay, because number 5 on my list is Ryan Helsley, 31-year-old right-hander who the projection from the free agent matrix is for a 2-year, $23 million contract this offseason. And when you think about Ryan Helsley before 2025, you would be shocked at 2 years, $23 million. You would have thought Helsley's going to get that Edwin Diaz $100 million closer contract because that's how good he was. From 2022 to 24, those 3 seasons, he was pretty easily a top 5 relief pitcher in baseball while he was the closer for the Cardinals. Now, he started to falter a little bit this season in St. Louis, and, the Cardinals weren't very good. His ERA, after being, 1.2, 2.4, 2.0 the last 3 seasons, it was a 3 ERA in 36 innings for St. Louis, but he was still, racking up 21 saves, one of the better closers in baseball. He was a well sought after piece at the deadline because the Cardinals were out of it, and they traded him to the Mets. And you could tell in St. Louis, right? Like, his strikeouts and walks look good. His, stuff still looked normal, but he giving up a few more home runs than usual, but no big, huge change. He was getting hit harder, and it's 45% hard hit rate, usually somewhere in the 30s. So that's a little concerning, but you still thought, hey, he's a good closer. The Mets go and get him to fortify the bullpen. He's still going to get a lot of money in free agency. Then he goes to the Mets, and everything falls apart. I mean, everything. He threw 20 innings for New York and wasn't even a closer. He was like a setup guy, middle reliever. Had a 7.20 ERA and a 5.19 FIP. Strikeout rate fell to 23%. Walk rate jumped to 12%. The barrel rate went up. Like, under the hood, nothing was awful. He wasn't even getting hit as hard as he used to get hit in St. Louis. The raw stuff numbers still look good. Like, Ryan Helsley has the best raw stuff of any of these 6 relievers if you just look at stuff plus numbers. Like, that is a big thing for him. His velocity on his fastball still looked normal in New York, right? It's a 4-pitch mix. Really, it's a 3-pitch mix. He rarely throws his cutter. It's a slider at 89, a fastball at 99, and a curveball at 81. But the slider and the 4-seamer make up more than 90% of the pitches he throws. It's really a 2-pitch mix at the end of the day. He was just giving up way more balls in play. The strikeout rate collapsed with the Mets. And all of a sudden, all those balls in play were finding grass. Now, Ryan Helsley has been kind of public in thinking he was tipping his pitches in New York, but the dude threw 20 innings as a reliever, and you couldn't figure out in, 22 outings with the Mets how you were tipping. That is what concerns me. Like, fastball slider makes up 93% of his pitches. Batters hit 140 against the slider, and they hit 422 against the fastball this year. I mean, teams destroyed that 4-seam fastball with the Mets. They never swung and missed. It was something with that fastball that he was tipping, and I believe him that he was tipping. I mean, when you have a fastball at 99 miles an hour, you have a 127 stuff plus, which is 3rd in all of baseball this year. You know there's a really, really talented pitcher in there. And if it's only going to take, 2 years, $25-ish million to get him, that could be a steal for what Ryan Helsley could be and has been in the recent past. But the reason why I have him all the way down at number 5 is that I'd be okay with him being the choice for the Orioles to be the closer, but he was so bad with the Mets. You worry that, like, 22 outings in 2 months with a team, he couldn't figure out what the pitch tipping thing is, and he has a whole offseason now to figure it out. I worry he's still going to struggle to fix the issue because he knew he was tipping and he couldn't stop it. And maybe it's more than pitch tipping. Maybe something else is going on in there. The stuff is electric, elite. There is a top 5 closer in there. But is that guy gone? That's what you'd have to worry about if you're going to give him some money. Coming up next at number 4 and 3 on the list, we got 2 guys with some connections to the Orioles, both those connections in very different ways. We'll get to 4 and 3 right after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So we continue on with our Orioles free agent closer wish list for this offseason, with presumably Felix Bautista being out for most of 2026. Mike Elias has made it pretty clear the O's are going to be in the free agent closer market. There's a lot of good ones out there. Number 6 on my list was Emilio Pagan. Number 5 was Ryan Helsley. And we move on to number 4, a semi-surprising free agent in 31-year-old right-handed pitcher Pete Fairbanks, who is projected to get a 2-year, $18 million deal this offseason. Now, Fairbanks, when I initially did this list, I actually did it really early in the offseason because I thought I was going to be able to do this episode a lot earlier than the Orioles kept making news with moves and waiver claims and hiring coaches and all that good stuff. But I didn't even have Fairbanks on the list because I didn't think he was going to be a free agent. Fairbanks, who will be 32 in December, had an $11 million team option on his contract with the Rays for 2026. And now I know the Rays are cheap, and $11 million is a lot for the Rays to pay one player, even now that they are going to be under new ownership. But I thought at the very least, like, Fairbanks has been so good, the Rays will probably pick up the option and then trade him because someone would take Pete Fairbanks essentially on a 1-year, $11 million deal. He's been a good enough closer that a lot of teams, probably including the Orioles, would be interested in a deal like that. So I thought they'll pick it up, they'll trade him. Yeah, could he be an Oriole? Yeah, but via trade, but he wouldn't be available as a free agent. And then somewhat surprisingly, they declined the contract. I guess they just couldn't get anybody to take him in a trade, didn't want to be saddled with the $11 million. And so they just sent him on his way. Now, Fairbanks was healthy this year. He threw 60 innings. He had a 2.85 ERA. He picked up 27 saves as the Rays closer. Third straight year, he's had at least 23 saves for Tampa Bay. And the 16 1/3 innings was by far a career high in innings pitched. It matched his previous high, which was 45 1/3 each of the last 2 years. This is like far and away the healthiest season Fairbanks has had. And pitcher health is unpredictable, but it's nice to get a guy when he's coming off his healthiest season. I mean, over the last 4 years, he had missed time with a forearm issue, a hip issue, a lat injury, a shoulder issue. He had some nerve damage. Like, that is not a good list of injuries, but he was pretty healthy this year. Unfortunately, despite the health, the stuff was down again. And really, it has declined every year since 2022. When you go back to 2022, I mean, he was a 149 stuff plus, basically had the nastiest stuff in Major League Baseball. Then he went to a 136, then a 116, and then down to a career low 111 this year. Really, a lot of it is the four-seam fastball. That four-seamer from Pete Fairbanks has taken a huge hit over the years on how effective it was. I mean, opponents still hit only 221 and slugged only 319 against it this year. I mean, it is certainly still a good pitch. He still throws it 51% of the time. It's still sitting at 97 miles per hour on average. That is still a good pitch. But when you look back on what that four-seam fastball used to be, it's a pretty big difference. I mean, the velocity is down from, just 2 years ago, he was sitting 99 and now he's sitting 97. And that induced vertical break on the pitch, remember, like 17 seen as good, 18 elite, anything above 18, and you're like, wow, this is one of the best rising fastballs in baseball. He was at 20 inches of induced vertical break in 2022. He was throwing a pitch 99 miles an hour with 20 inches of IBB. That's why that year, opponents hit 118 against the Pete Fairbanks fastball. He threw it 61% of the time at 99 miles an hour and just dominated guys with that pitch. That's how good it was. Now you see, you take 2 ticks off it velocity-wise. The IVB is down 3 inches to 17, which is still good, but not in the crazy elite category where he basically had the best fastball in baseball. And now guys can hit it a little bit. They're swinging and missing much less at the pitch. They're having more success. Now his slider is still elite, and that is the pitch that's going to continue to make him a good closer if he's going to be. 173 average, 31% whiff rate against it. It's got a very unique movement. It's more of a death ball curveball than a slider. If you remember from the 2023 postseason, Jordan Montgomery of the Rangers threw that death ball, kind of just short, harder break, goes straight down out of nowhere. Kumar Rocker throws it, but Fairbanks probably has the best one out of anybody in baseball. I mean, the O's have seen him a lot. He's been the closer for the Rays in division for a while. And it's elite. He did throw some more changeups this year. It's something he's adding in because the fastball hasn't been as good. Now, he only threw 5% changeups, but it's a good change of pace pitch that I think whatever team signs him is going to ask him to throw it more. And he's still a really good reliever. But, I mean, you look at the stuff going way down. You look at the strikeout rates. I mean, Pete Fairbanks used to be, I thought, the best closer in baseball for a while there. I mean, again, you go back to 2022. These are absurd numbers. He had a 44% strikeout rate and a 3% walk rate. That is unheard of. He had a 0.86 FIP that season. That's unreal. Now, a 24% K rate and a 7% walk rate, those are still good numbers in 2025, but that is nothing compared to what he used to be. Again, still good, would still help any all 30 bullpens in baseball could use Pete Fairbanks. But he's not the guy I think even Orioles fans think of that he was with the Rays a couple of years ago. He's a different player, and there was just the weird stuff with him, remember, late in the year after he hits and injures Samuel Basallo, blowing a kiss to the Orioles dugout. at the end of the game, and then everybody freaked out. And then he said in the post game that he was blowing a kiss to a fan above the dugout and said he loves the Orioles because they like Legos too. And it was just a very weird sequence with Pete Fairbanks there. And even if he was blowing a kiss to a fan above the dugout, you got to have the wherewithal to know you just injured the like up and coming member of the Orioles who they just gave a long-term contract extension to, and you're going to blow a kiss in the area of the dugout. Even if it was to a fan, it's still just idiotic and zero feel for the situation. You combine that with how down he's been, I worry about signing Fairbanks. I'm not really on it. The reason why he's number 4 on the list is like, even with how down he is, he was a closer who threw 60 innings last year and had a 2.83 ERA. Like, he would absolutely still help the Orioles bullpen, but there are better options out there. Like option number 3, I said these two guys have connections to the Orioles. This one, a much more positive connection. That is Robert Suarez, 34-year-old right-hander who has a 3-year, $48 million contract projection for this offseason. Suarez, who will be 35 in March, is, of course, the younger brother of Orioles pitcher Albert Suarez, as both of them have had kind of cool paths to getting over to Major League Baseball. Now, Suarez did have a 2 years and $16 million remaining on his deal with the Padres, but he had the ability to opt out of that this offseason and become a free agent. And he did chose to opt out, meaning he's going to be seeking more than 2 years and more than $16 million. Now, he had a 2.88 FIP this season. Did Robert Suarez to go with his 2.97 ERA. That was the lowest FIP he's had since coming back over to the majors. He was a dominant pitcher, dominant reliever in Japan for a long time. Then he came back over to Major League Baseball with the Padres in 2022 and has been here for 4 years. And really, despite a little injury-aided, really just a trip up a bit in 2023, besides that's been one of the best relievers in baseball in those other 3 seasons that he's been over here. Now, he had his lowest walk rate. He upped his strikeout rate by about 5% this year. I mean, these are good numbers to have. 28% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate. You'll take that. He was throwing more strikes. His changeup kind of used to be his best pitch. He pulled back on it last year. Then he upped it again in 2025. It wasn't very good this year. Like, opponents hit 310. The whiff rate was way down, but he seemed to trust it a little bit more. I mean, it's a 3-pitch mix. It's a 4-seamer at 99, it's a changeup at 91, and it's a sinker at 99. That's basically all he throws. It's no breaking balls. It's 4-seamer, sinker, and changeup, and it's just heavy overall fastball usage. I mean, he throws 60% 4-seamers and 16% sinkers. It's kind of a different mix than you see from a lot of other pitchers, but he still hits 99. He still has a batting average around 100, 120 against most of his fastballs. Like, that's good stuff. But he doesn't really have a breaking ball. And that's a little concerning when the changeup also struggled this year. Both fastballs are so good it hasn't really mattered. But if the changeup could come back, or, there's a cutter he's thrown a few times, maybe the Orioles like that pitch, he kind of feels like the safe option, right? Like, he's been doing it this way for 4 straight years with success, hasn't made a ton of tweaks or changes. If you can get him on a 2 or 3 year deal to just do the same thing, reunite him with Albert, I think he'd be a really good addition. And he's a guy where, like, I think he'd be okay moving to the 8th inning if Felix Bautista came back and was really good in 2027 as he begins to age. I think this is like the safer, but I still, again, as he's going to be 35 in March, probably doesn't have as big of an upside as the next 2 players do. Because number 1 and 2 on this list not only might be the best 2 guys out there, they also have the biggest upside to be good for more years if you're going to give out a multi-year contract to a closer. So let's get to the top 2 on my closer wish list coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans and cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets, it can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. Well, that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I can pull up Game Time in a couple of taps. I'm looking at Ravens-Jets next weekend. I'm seeing amazing deals. Talk about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So let's jump into the final two closers on my free agent closer wish list for the Orioles. And number 2 on my list is a guy, again, I admitted he is the best overall closer available, but for the amount of money he might be seeking this offseason, that's kind of why he's down at number 2 and not number 1. And that is 31-year-old right-handed pitcher Edwin Diaz, who is projected to get a 4-year, $84 million contract this offseason. Now, Diaz had 3 years and $50 million remaining on his contract with the Mets, but had an opportunity to opt out this offseason, and he did opt out, which means he's going to be looking for more than 3 years, and he's going to be looking for more than $50 million. That is a lot of money to pay to a closer. We know the Orioles are willing to pay for a reliever, right? They had an agreement for 3 years and $40 million with Jeff Hoffman last offseason before that fell apart. But Diaz is the best closer in baseball. I mean, he had a 1.63 ERA this season. Did that in 66 and a third innings with 28 saves, had one of the lowest walk rates of his career. Like, he posted an 8% walk rate while still having an elite 38% strikeout rate. I mean, he's not the pitcher maybe that he was in 2022. I mean, that was one of the craziest seasons we've ever seen from a reliever. He had a 1.31 ERA and a 50% strikeout rate that year. I mean, that was absurd. He's still, I think, the best closer in baseball. So again, in theory, it's like he should be number 1 on the list. If the best closer in baseball is available in free agency, he should probably be number 1 on the free agent wish list. The issue is, I think he's just going to command so much more money than anyone else, right? It's an elite 2-pitch mix, the 4-seamer at 97, the slider at 89. It's really all he throws, but the 110 stuff plus was the lowest of his career. The movement and the velo were a little bit down on his fastball this year. I'm not saying he's taking a huge step back, but you could see him take a tiny step back in 2025, but it's strikeout rates, it's whiff rates, it's barrel rates allowed, some of the best in MLB. He's just going to be, I think, by far, like not even close, the most expensive closer out there. And to me, as good as Diaz is, the projection's 4.80. I think he could easily get 5 years and $100+ million, like the initial deal he got with the Mets, he just opted out of. I don't know if I'm comfortable giving that to any relief pitcher, even if it is Edwin Diaz. And that is why he's number 2 on my list, which brings me to number 1 on my list. And that is a guy who at least the Orioles fans that I talk to have been very high on getting this guy on a bounce back year. Now, he's already been in the news connected to a bunch of teams. We haven't seen the Orioles connected to this name, but it's going to happen at some point. And that is Devin Williams, the 31-year-old right-handed pitcher who is projected for a 3-year, $42 million contract this offseason. Again, pretty much equal to the Jeff Hoffman one from last year. Tells me the O's would be very happy to pay that for a good closer. Now, let's get it out of the way first. Devin Williams is coming off by far the worst season of his career. Was traded from the Brewers to the Yankees in the offseason last year. And in 62 innings with the Yanks, he posted a 4.79 ERA. Here is Devin Williams' last 4 seasons of ERA. 0.33, 2.5, 193, 153, 125, last 5 seasons. And then a 4.79 in a career high 62 innings and a career high 67 appearances. He saved only 18 games for the Yankees because they kind of yo-yoed him in and out of the closer role. Here's the thing. You look a little deeper. Yes, was it a 4.79 ERA? It was a 3.07 expected ERA. It was a 2.68 FIP. This was, I think, the single pitcher in baseball who had the worst luck and the least amount of help defensively behind him of anyone else in the major leagues. One of the bigger ERA to FIP gaps of any pitcher this year was Devin Williams. And if you just look at what he still does, it's still elite. The chase rate, 35%, top 10 in baseball. The whiff rate, 38%, top 5 in baseball. The strikeout rate, 34.7%, top 10 in baseball. He gets incredible top 5 extension down the mound, which means he's basically releasing the ball closer to you and makes it harder to hit. Is it just a 2-pitch mix? Yeah. It's the airbender, crazy movement change up. And it's a 4-seam fastball that sits around 94, right? The velo was slightly down this year, but opponents still hit only 200 and swung and missed 38% of the time against his 4-seamer, with, again, 38% swing and miss against that changeup, which was a little more hittable this season, but still at only a 194 batting average against. Now, he did miss less bats, and that's basically the reason why the ERA went up. He dropped from a 43% strikeout rate to a 35% strikeout rate. Though that's still a great number, and he dropped his walk rate by 3%, basically had the lowest walk rate of his career in a full season. So you really like to see that in what is quote unquote a down year. Opponents hit just 196 against him this year, but that was also the highest of his career since his rookie season in 2019. I think it's just a big time reliever volatility and small sample size case. Like, it's hard to imagine how his ERA got that high when the velos are pretty much the same. The stuff numbers look the same. The command was better. He just got hit a little harder than he ever did before and gave up a little more contact because the strikeout rate, while still elite, went down a little bit. Like, the changeup still moves like the airbender, but it got a little bit less swing and miss this year. And a little bit harder contact against the four-seamer is a little concerning, but the changeup is just so good. I don't think a lot of teams are going to be scared away, especially with the amount of teams we've seen already reported interest in Devin Williams 2 weeks into the offseason at this point. It's going to be an interesting market because he is, again, coming off by far his worst season if you just look at the surface level stats. But every team, maybe minus the Colorado Rockies at this point, knows to look below just the ERA of a reliever and see how good Devin Williams still was and still honestly projects to be, right? He's 31 years old. He's not the same Devin Williams he was a couple years ago when he really did look like the best reliever in baseball when he was with the Brewers, but he still, to me, can be one of the best closers in the majors. And even if that 4.7 ERA scares teams off just enough to make it, a 3-year deal instead of a 4-year deal, make him cost $40 million instead of $55 or $60 million, that is where the Orioles should be able to pounce, maybe give him a little more money and just go get Devin Williams, right? The Orioles should be willing to jump on this reliever market. Francis Romero had a report on Friday that the reliever market seems to be moving really quickly, and they might be kind of the first players to sign this offseason. That would kind of be interesting because sometimes those guys have to wait longer than anyone else, but it's a lot of good closers out there. I think the best thing for the O's to do is just identify which of these 6 that I talked about is their favorite. Hopefully it's Devin Williams, and just go get him. Like, give him a big contract. The projection was 3 years, 42. Like, go right to Devin Williams right now and offer him 3 years, $55 million, and just say, boom, there's our offer. It's probably the best offer he'd have on the table right now, and force him to turn it down and go somewhere else. And then if that doesn't work, you can reassess, you can stay in contact with Williams, you can start talking, with the other guys like Fairbanks or Suarez or Diaz. That's what I would do if I were the Orioles. Just get him in there, lock down the closer spot, know you have Kittredge in the setup man spot, and then you can kind of build the bullpen around that. And you don't have to worry about that closer thing the starting pitching probably still the more important thing for this team. But if you don't get that closer, it's always going to hang over you as you're talking to the starting pitchers. I'd be good just getting the closer out of the way, especially if the market is moving fast, and then moving on from that. But that is my closer free agent wish list. Let me know in the comments, like, where did I go wrong with my rankings? There's a couple guys that didn't even put in here, right? Raisel Iglesias and Kenley Jansen are 2 veteran closers that are also free agents. I kind of toiled around with either of those guys being on this list as well. They're guys who have racked up saves in their careers. Their stuff and everything is way down, which is why they're not on the list, but they could certainly be possibilities for the Orioles as well. Let me know, like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. If you're a listener, make sure to subscribe and follow wherever you listen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify really helps out the show. And if you have any Orioles thoughts, feedback on the show, whatever it may be, questions for me, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. I will be back tomorrow if we get any more Orioles coaching news. Remember, we got a couple of more names to get filled out on the staff. We'll get to those. And if not, we'll continue on throughout the rest of the week with some of these free agent wish lists and continue to look back on the seasons of some of these Orioles players in 2025. But I'm back tomorrow. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.